Today I have a fun project using that gorgeous wheat stitch and making a home decor item, which are baskets. The pattern comes in 4 sizes from small, medium, large, and extra large. Today on camera I will be showing you how to make the small size because that will go the quickest. The yarn I'm using for this is the Hue and Me 2 of Wands. This is the Haze Broom Artichoke, Love Song, and Sea Salt colors, but you can mix it up and use any color you want. This yarn has a great color range, and you can get this on We Crochet, as well as the We Crochet Dots hook is listed on We Crochet. I love the set of these. It's affordable, it's amazing, and it works really, really well. You'll also want a pair of scissors and a yarn needle to weave in those ends. And then optional are these wood circles. I have one more size coming for the smallest in the mail today. I couldn't find it in the stores. If you can find these in the stores, sometimes they are a bit more priced better, but I am linking these to Amazon. They're just little wooden discs. So sometimes you can find other things as well. Like you can use a plastic canvas. A lot of times those will come in circles. And I just like to stick these in the bottom of my basket to reinforce it. You do not have to have these. These are optional. I also have included in the description of this video and in the pattern blocking mats and blocking pins. Now you don't have to have these as well. We can figure out other ways to block. I'm doing a steam block with this, and I'll talk about that as we get into the video. I find it just makes the basket look super sharp and nice when you go to put together the body and the base if you block the body to be the measurements that we need. And plus it always just looks nice and crisp and clean when it comes to fabrics. But if you don't have a blocking mat or blocking pins, you can just use regular sewing pins with a towel on top of your bed and just block it to the measurements to make it look nice and sharp. Let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. We are going to start by making the base of this basket. So we're going to make a circle, and this will be the base of it. So I'm going to make a magic ring. And then we are going to start by placing our hook in there. And I always like to do a quick slip stitch with the magic ring to get it going. It just really helps. And now inside this magic ring, we're going to start with a stacked single crochet. And what a stacked single crochet is we're going to enter into that ring, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And then we're going to go back into this left bar, and we're going to insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And that is the first stitch of this round. And you'll want to go ahead and grab a stitch marker and mark the top of that so that it's easier to keep track of our stitches in the round. And now we're going to double crochet 9 into the circle. So at the end of this round, we will have a total of 10 stitches. And now that we have all of the stitches worked into that magic ring, we're going to take the tail end and simply close that ring. And we can close it tighter in just a minute. There's no need to close it too tight because it can make this next round a little bit more difficult. We're going to move our stitch marker and join to the first stitch with a slip stitch and tighten that down. Now we're going to be working into this stitch we just joined to by working a stacked single crochet. And you'll want to mark the top of that stitch to keep track of that in the round. And then we are going to double crochet into the same stitch. And then in the next stitch, we're going to work 2 double crochets. So we're going to be increasing this so that it is a circle. And now for each stitch around, we're going to work 2 double crochet stitches. And what this will do is we'll bring our stitch count to 20 stitches at the end of round 2. Now at the end of round 2, we're going to join to our first stitch with a slip stitch. And then if you want, you can tighten down that tail. If the tail end drives you crazy, you can weave it in now or you can weave it in later. And now we're going to start round 3. This might curl a little bit on you. It kind of looks like it's curling, but it will even out. And if it curls a lot, check your stitch count, but in the end, we'll be able to block this flat if yours has a little bit more curl. Now, starting in the very first stitch, we're going to do a stacked single crochet and double crochet into that same stitch. Go ahead and mark the first stitch of this round. And then in the next stitch, we'll just simply double crochet And then in the next stitch, we'll do 2 double crochets and then 1 double crochet in the next. And that will be our repeat around. So that's 2 double crochets and then 1 double crochet into the next. Once we get to the end of round 3, we will have a total of 30 stitches. So keep repeating that all the way around. Now at the end of round 3, we're going to slip stitch to join, and then we'll start round 4 with a stacked single crochet and a double crochet into the same. And then we will want to make sure we mark the first stitch of this round, and then we're going to double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And then this next part will be our repeat for round 4. We're going to do the next stitch with 2 double crochets into that stitch, and then we will double crochet 1 into each of the next 2 stitches. And that's our repeat all the way around, and at the end of round 4 we will have a total of 40 stitches. Now at the end of round 4 we will join with a slip stitch, and we'll do our last round for this size, which is round 5. We're going to start with a stacked single crochet, double crochet into the same, and then double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. And be sure to mark that first stitch of the round if you need to. And now here's going to be our repeat. We're going to do 2 double crochets into the next, and then double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. And this will get us to the 50 stitch count that we need for the size small.
We can fasten off for this size, but I want to show you how to do what's called an invisible join. It's my favorite way to join on a final round. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn and then pull it through that last stitch, and then grab your yarn needle. And this is such a fun way to join at the end of a round. It's like magic. We're going to look at the last stitches we had at the beginning of the round. This is our first stitch, and this is our second stitch of the round. We are going to go through the second stitch as if to crochet it and pull our yarn through. Then we are going to go back down this last stitch that we worked right in the center of that stitch that we had worked, and then we're going to pull that yarn through. And what this does is it works a mock stitch. So I can kind of like pull it to make it look just right, but it works a mock stitch over the first stitch of the round, evens it out, and you can't even tell where this round started and stopped. This is a great way to join, and it does not add any stitches. You will still have the same exact stitch count, so now you can weave in your end and set this aside for later. Now you can do a quick measurement of this before setting it aside. This should be approximately 7 inches in diameter. The other sizes will be 8, 9, and 10 inches in diameter when you're measuring across your piece.
Now we are ready to start the body of this basket, which truly is the feature of it. So we are going to start with a slip knot and place that onto our hook. These are crocheted in rows, and so we will be working this part, the basket body, in rows and joining it at the end. So to get started, we are going to chain 13. After chaining 13, we are going to start by working in the second hook from the chain, but I love to work on this underside underneath this top V where you find that hump. So in the second chain from the hook, we're going to work a single crochet, and you can mark the first stitch of each round if that makes it easier to keep track of stitches. Then we will single crochet in the remaining chains across. At the end of this row, we will have a total of 12 single crochet stitches for row 1. And now for row 2, we're going to turn our work, chain 1, and working in the back humps only, we will single crochet in each stitch across. The chain 1 at the beginning of this row does not count as a stitch. And if you've never worked in the back loop before, we normally insert through both of these loops that make that top V, But to work in the back loop, we're going to skip the front loop and only crochet into that back loop all the way across. Now at the end of row 2, we will turn our work, and this is where it gets really fun. Now every single row will be the stitch count of 12. We're not changing our stitch counts for the body of this. We're going to start by chaining 1 and single crocheting in the first stitch of the row. Then we're going to work our puff stitches. We're going to skip this stitch and work into the next with a single crochet. And now we're going to go back to our skip stitch in there, and we're going to work a modified puff stitch. So we're going to yarn over, go back into that skip stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and we want to pull these loops as high as the first loop on our hook. Yarn over and insert into that same skipped stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. We now have 5 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through 4 of those loops. And then to complete the stitch, we'll yarn over and pull through the remaining 2. And that's going to be our repeat until we get to the last stitch of this row. So let's do that again together. Skip a stitch and single crochet into the next. Now working back to that skip stitch, yarn over and insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. Do that again. Yarn over and pull through the first 4, yarn over and complete the stitch. Now when we get to the last stitch of this row, of row 3, we will simply single crochet into the last and turn our work. Now row 4 is a repeat of row 3. We will single crochet into the very first stitch, skip a stitch and single crochet into the next. Working back into that skip stitch, work a modified puff. And we will work that all the way across until we get to the last stitch of this row, which will be a single crochet. And here's where we can start to see that gorgeous wheat stitch work up. Now rows 5, 6, 7, and 8 are simply a repeat, but for rows 5 and 6, we're working into these stitches versus our very first row we worked into the chain spaces. So we're going to turn our work, chain 1, and single crochet in the back loop only for each stitch across for row 5 and for row 6. Now for rows 7 and 8, we're going to turn our work and chain 1 and single crochet into the very first stitch for row 7. So row 7 and 8 is just a repeat of row 3, but I'll show you that again. We're going to skip a stitch and single crochet into the next, and then work that modified puff stitch into that skip stitch. And we'll work that all the way across until the last stitch. So skip a stitch and single crochet 1, and then the modified puff stitch into the skip stitch. And then we'll work that until the end of the row, and we'll have 1 stitch left, and we'll single crochet in the last. And that will be the repeat for row 7 and for row 8. Now the pattern repeat for this is rows 5, 6, 7, and 8. We're just going to keep doing those over and over until we have the length we need for the body of the basket. I do highly recommend for this, grab a tape measure and make sure that you're on track when you have enough rows, because we want to make sure that we are close to that measurement, because that's going to be the circumference of the basket, and we want to match that. When you are doing this, if you come up slightly under or slightly over, don't worry about it. I've given a general estimate of how many rows and repeats we'll need to do to get there, but some of the sizes might end up, if you're looking at the exact gauge, being about a ½ inch off. And that's where blocking can come in, because this is somewhat of a flexible fabric. We can block it to be the exact size that we need. So I'm going to finish working up the repeats for the size small and then come on back. Now for the size small, I've done a total of 12 repeats. That is 48 rows, and this is about 22 inches long. Some of the sizes we want to make sure that we block them, because they might be 1/4 to a ½ of an inch too short, or we would just want to make sure they're going to go around the circumference of your circle so that it sits nicely as a basket. So I'm going to go ahead and do some blocking. This one is about 4.5 inches tall, so we're going to block it to that dimension, and then we're also going to make sure it's 22 inches long. I love these blocking combs because they make it go so much faster in terms of sticking the points in there, but you can also use sewing pins and a towel on like maybe a bedspread. So you can just use a towel to do this into on a bedspread. I've left my yarn attached because we're not going to fasten off yet. We'll be coming back to use it when we join these edges together. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this out. Now that I have this where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my steamer. It'll get a little bit loud, but I'm just going to do a gentle steam on this to set these stitches in place. Now that I've steamed this, I let it sit for a few minutes just to kind of dry off any of that extra steam, and then we can go ahead and pull out these pins and we will be ready to join the body with the bottom. Now our next step for this is going to be to join our first row with the last row, and with the right side facing you, we're going to go ahead and fold this over, and now the wrong side is facing out, and that's what we want. And we're going to line up these edges, chain one, and go through the first stitch of your current row and the first stitch of your first row, and then we will yarn over and slip stitch those together. And we're going to be doing that all the way across. So go into the next stitch of the current row and the next stitch of the first row, yarn over and slip stitch those together. We will do that all the way down for as many stitches as the pattern calls for, depending on what size that you are doing. Now that we have slip stitched all of the stitches together, we are going to go ahead and flip this piece of fabric so now that the right side is facing out. Our seam is on the inside here, and now we have our right side facing out. I'm going to go ahead and chain one and tighten that down. And now we're ready to start attaching the bottom base of this to the body. And to do this, the best way I think is to grab some stitch markers or some fabric clips or some pins, whatever you might use that was helpful to pin this in place so that when we are slip stitching this together, it slip stitches around evenly. So I'm going to go ahead, for me, what I have around today is some stitch markers, and I'm going to go ahead and place those around this side of it. This is going to be the base, and you can choose if you want the nice side, so the right side of this fabric on the base, to face out on the bottom, or if you would rather, you can have the wrong side face out, and on the inside, when you look into the basket, the right side will be facing out. That is personal preference. Since I will be putting a piece of wood inside of this, I'm going to have the nice side facing out on the bottom to see it, and this piece of wood will sit nicely inside of the basket. Now that we have placed our stitch markers all the way around, we've got it set up pretty evenly for us to join. So I'm going to take my crochet hook, and we're going to go through the fabric, the body fabric, and then through one of the stitches along the base, yarn over and slip stitch together. So through the fabric, through the stitch on the base, yarn over and slip stitch together. And we're going to be doing this all the way around. And what these stitch markers do is they help us line this up to keep it evenly so we don't end up with extra fabric at the end or not enough fabric at the end to join these together. We want to make sure that between these stitch markers, we are placing those stitches so that this evenly sits all the way around the bottom of the basket and attaches quite nicely. Once you get to a stitch marker or a fabric clip, you can go ahead and just simply take it out. This is the best method I have found to make this part easy without feeling frustrated, is just to throw in these markers that hold it together nicely. As you can see, it makes sure that I'm keeping on track with these slip stitches. Now that I've worked all the way around, taking out all the stitch markers, once you've worked all of those stitches, you can go ahead and fasten off and then weave in that end and the base is now attached. And the last thing we have to do is the top of the basket. Now you might find your basket, because the way the stitches are rolling, kind of rolls in on this bottom. But what you can do is, if it bothers you, you can always do a light wet blocking. So spray the inside of this, press it down to be flat, let it dry overnight, and that will alleviate that bottom edge from puffing up. It's not a big deal. You can still use the basket if it does puff up slightly, but if you like that flat bottom look, you can do that, as well as if you throw in one of these wooden discs, that really flattens it out too. But first we're going to finish the top of this. We're going to finish the top of the basket, and then you can use it. So let's get going. Now to work around the top part of this basket, you're going to want to place 4 stitch markers evenly around, evenly spaced. So we're doing this in quarter quadrants to help us place our stitches as evenly as possible and feel less frustrated. So I've placed my 4 stitch markers around the top of this basket, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my yarn. I'm going to go right into that very first stitch marker, chain 1, that does not count as a stitch, and then we're going to single crochet into that same space along the edge of this basket. Now I'm going to go ahead and move my stitch marker to that first stitch to mark the first stitch in this round. So nice and handy there. We're going to be working 1/4 of the stitches between each one of these quadrants. For this one, we're working a total of 50 stitches, which is about 12.5 stitches between here. So you want to be thinking, okay, I'm going to work 12 stitches to about this point, and 13 stitches to this point, 12 more to this point, and 13 to this point. So we're just breaking this up. But by the time you get to this side, so when you're working from where you start to over here, you should have 25 stitches, half the stitches that will be working in this. The reason why it's helpful to break it up into quadrants and think about it this way is because it will be easier to keep it even all the way around. If we're not conscious of where we are, it's very quickly can go wrong to where you might get to this point and you've already worked 50 stitches, or you might get to the end and you've only worked 40 stitches. So this will help it keep it nice and even. So we've done our first stitch by doing a single crochet. But I love to make these edges nice and neat. And here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to insert into this left bar of our single crochet stitch. So we're going to be going into this left bar of this single crochet stitch with our crochet hook. And then we're going to go into the next space, so like spacing it out, of the fabric of our body, yarn over and pull through the fabric and also through that left bar. We have 2 loops on our hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through both loops on the hook for our second stitch. And then we're going to be repeating that all the way around. So we're going to go through that left bar into the next space, yarn over and pull through the fabric and the first loop on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. Let's do that another time together. And what this does is it creates our single crochet stitches, but as you notice, the left bar creates a nice line along this edge. So I'm going to flatten this down a bit so we can see it a bit better. And I'm going to do it again. Just I don't want you to feel confused on this. If you don't want to do this, you can just single crochet around or slip stitch around. This is just kind of making it look as if we slip stitch then single crocheted. We're just doing it all at once. So we're going to go through that left bar, through the next space, yarn over and pull up a loop, pull through the first loop on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. And I'm going to keep working this all the way around and being conscious of how many stitches I've worked. So if I need to work about 12 stitches to this first point and I've worked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we're about halfway there, we're right on track. And so that's the way we need to be conscious about it, be thinking about the spacing of these stitches where you're entering onto the body fabric of this to make sure that we are working them evenly around. So I'm going to work this up and come back when I'm about halfway to show you a progress. So now I've just removed my second stitch marker, and this is my 25th stitch of this round. So we've done 25 stitches, we are halfway around, we've done half of the 50 stitches. And this will be the same concept if you're doing the larger sizes too, if you're working 50, 60, 70, or 80 stitches, this is how we're going to work this around. So now I need to do 25 more stitches, and I'm going to work those in the same way, being conscious of my stitch counts as I go, making sure that I'm placing them evenly between the stitch markers, and I'll come back when I've gotten back to the beginning of this round. Now that I've worked the stitches all the way around, I'm going to move my stitch marker for that first stitch and slip stitch to join. Now, after working evenly all the way around, we are going to slip stitch to join to the first stitch of the round and then chain 1. Now we're going to single crochet into the first 15 stitches of this round. So this is the round where we're going to set ourselves up for basket handles. If you do not want to do basket handles, you can simply single crochet all the way around for each stitch. So I am going to single crochet the first 15 stitches of this round. Now after single crocheting in the first 15, we are going to foundation single crochet 10 stitches. And to do this, we're going to use the last stitch to get started on our foundation stitches. So we're going to enter that left bar, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first loop on the hook, and then yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 loops. So now we've done our first foundation single crochet, and this next one's going to be a little bit easier. We're going to enter into the bottom of that previous stitch we just made, so like the bottom V of it. Yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first loop on the hook, yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 loops. One more time, we're going to go to the stitch we just made. We're going to go back into that base underneath, those 2 loops underneath, yarn over and pull up a loop. I like to pull it to the height of the loop on my hook, yarn over and pull through the first loop on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. And you can count your foundation stitches on the top here. They'll look just like all the other stitches, but we're able to kind of create them without having to use stitches along the body of the basket. So we're going to create 10 foundation single crochet stitches to make space for a handle. Now that I've created 10 foundation stitches, we are going to count and skip 10 stitches along the body of this basket and single crochet the next 15. So we're simply going to be repeating what we just did. We'll single crochet 15 stitches, and then we're going to foundation single crochet 10 more. Now that we have worked that again, so we've got our second handle here of foundation stitches, and then we've got the stitches we're skipping. We're going to join to the first stitch of the round and then chain 1 and single crochet into each stitch around. And this will include the stitches across the handles. So I'm going to mark the first stitch of the round, and now we're just simply going to single crochet all the way around. And this will include working across these handles, just single crocheting into those foundation stitches. It'll make our handle a little bit thicker and more sturdy. Now, once you've worked all the way around, we can fasten off, and just like we did with the bottom base of this basket, I want to do an invisible join to the beginning of the round to finish this off. So I'm going to move my stitch marker, and we're going to go to the second stitch of this round, and we're going to pull the yarn all the way through and then back down the top of the last stitch worked. And that just makes that mock stitch on top there, but it doesn't change our stitch count, and it's such a nice seamless finish. And then we can go ahead and weave in all of our ends. Now this basket comes in 4 different sizes. It's kind of hard for me to show you on camera, but the great thing about these is they do nest inside of each other for great storage, and since they're fabric, they can even fold down flat for storage as well. But these are so great for, holding extra toys, organizing pantries, cleaning out your craft room, anything like that. And these baskets are so cute. And this wheat stitch is just my favorite. This has been a popular stitch this year because not only is it fun to work up, but it packs a ton of texture in an easy 4-row repeat. This basket is great in any room. I hope that you have enjoyed this video tutorial. Be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube and join me for more fun projects soon.